Right, what team should we go to next here? Crumbz, maybe you have a pick here. What would you go to after Team Liquid? What's another team we should talk about?
I think it'll be interesting to go to EG then, because there's another Rogue player, Inspired coming over. I think that's Rogue just getting picked apart. Right? Rogue is getting picked apart. Jizuke finally is no more, right? No more Jizuke. The brand basically of EG was about his ups and downs. So this team is just putting all their eggs on Jojo Pyun. No matter how good the pieces of Impact, if he stays, Inspired, whatever AD carry they get with Vulcan are, it all hinges on how good is this rookie mid laner. Because if not, then you just wasted a lot of money. You really just wasted a lot of money because there doesn't seem to be any other prospects for EG besides Jojo. He's been really good in Academy, and they've been good at finding Danny. They struggle in the lane, good in team fights, but this is EG doubling down on their talent development, their talent scouting, really putting a lot of confidence behind this player, which is kind of exciting to see that, all right, some NA players might be given the shot, could step up to the plate and actually deliver, but that's a double-edged sword. Could deliver or could just make the whole thing collapse. So that's going to be the player that you just absolutely have to look out for if EG is actually going to go anywhere.
What do you think, Rich, VG?
Yeah, so I have a bit of a hot take on just junglers in general, especially in EU, but also NA. So I think Inspired will do well, just because we're in a region where Santorin is like the highest commodity priority in North America for junglers. So I think the talent pool of junglers in NA is pretty diabolical anyway. But I actually think in Europe, a lot of our junglers were very overrated. I think the jungle pool actually in Europe generally is pretty bad. And a lot of the focus, was on like how weak our tops were against like Eastern tops and whatever. And historically, that's certainly been a truism. But I think that the way the world's meta was, it was more top side rather than top lane. And I think we were exposed jungle-wise as much as anything else. But even prior to Worlds, I did feel players such as Inspired were monstrously overrated. I feel that with Rogue specifically as well, you basically had perpetually 3 winning lanes the entire year. Otto, certainly during the regular seasons or whatever, was smashing lane basically any matchup, anytime he played. Larson is a very good laner, maybe not quite as aggressive, but still very good and competent at controlling his lane. And then obviously Hans and Trimby, whatever you want to say about Trimby's shortcomings, in lane, those two were fire, right? So you had the best 3 lanes in Europe. And Inspired was like AFK farming half the time. And he was able to do so because of how ludicrously strong his laners were. And even though I do still think Inspired is a good jungler, I think you could have put a bunch of different junglers on that team and they would have done very similar things. So I actually think it's like an interesting signing where it might work out, even given what I've said, just because the NA jungle pool is so bad. But I actually don't think spending loads of money on a European jungler as a default perspective was like generally good business, because I think EU junglers suck.
By the way, it's also arguably, this is, of all the teams to do it, this ain't a great one either, Mix. If you're saying Inspired had winning lanes, what fucking winning lanes he got here? Look at these players he's got in the lanes.
You only know top could be the only one. And then, so are you saying, Rich, that then Rogue might be one of the biggest winners in the offseason, knowing that their players might be getting overrated? You sign Inspired for a bigger deal, get a big buyout, and then you get 2 players to be bought out for and the teams that bought them out overspend for them, and you just cashed in.
So I'm not going to go that far, because I think it's very like high levels of copium to look at what Rogue did and be like, yeah, it's going to be better this year than last year. I think that from all I know, again, this isn't me saying that this is the case. I'm saying for all I know, Malrang speaks no English and isn't a good jungler. I don't know if he is or isn't. I don't know if he speaks English or not. So for me, that's just a huge coin flip, at least in my head. And obviously, they downgraded ADC. Did they get decent money for the buyouts? Yeah, probably. But in terms of actual performance levels I'm expecting to see in spring, I mean, basically it all comes down to how good is Malrang. What I would say is that I do believe that even though if this was 2014, someone would say, oh, the substitute jungler on like the world championship winning, well, actually they didn't win, did they? But on a world championship winning level team, that guy's obviously going to be really good, and people don't really take into account reality in that sense. But I think actually being on Dam 1 and just being around the LCK in general, I think the junglers in the East, and specifically in LCK actually this year, was so far ahead EU. There could actually just be a chance that this guy's an average LCK level jungler, but he still smurfs in Europe. I think our junglers were horrendous. So we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if Rogue have a really fast start, just because Malrang understands jungling way better than any of our players do. Bar, I would say Razork. I think Razork is legitimately a very good jungler, but as for the rest of them, yeah, I'm just really low on EU junglers, basically. I don't think Rogue did some genius play based off of this. I think they saw an opportunity to cash out. And yeah, I don't know if they saw much beyond that.
Obviously, this is going to be an LCS-themed episode, but I'll just touch on that briefly, because I will just say this. Mainly, it's just one of those things where I just piss in fans' faces because they deserve it. That's all you fucking deserve. And if you don't like it, why are you here? I'm basically a fucking esports dominatrix.
Some people like this.
Exactly. Yeah, just take it, you little bitch. So, right, here's what I would say, and it goes like this. All those stupid comments people have made for the last 2 years about G2, like, oh, Carlos isn't trying to make the region strong. Well, what's he doing here? He's just trying to make money off players. Like, those all apply to the other teams that came up, you fucking morons. The so-called nouveau riche, and spoiler, they're not so riche, as it were. So Rogue and Mad Lions are inarguably the better teams in terms of performance in the LEC, but as orgs, they are not G2, by the way. And unsurprisingly, this is the problem fans don't know. The most dangerous time ever when you're an org is when you have a roster that's put together for reasons other than you being the best org. So in the cases of these two teams, they got an amazing core of players really early on in Rogue that they gambled on, and in Mad Lions they had people like Peter Dunn and Mark actually make the correct decisions on people out of VRLs. These are not teams that have spent big. These are not teams, by the way, that now have been able to even retain their best talents. And spoiler, what did they do when they sold their best talents? Went back to the bargain bin and started picking people out again. So everyone who wants to criticise G2, like, you look really silly if you're actually then going to turn around and tell me Mad Lions and Rogue are making themselves really strong and keeping LEC strong. Spoiler, they're not. They're also, by the way, not trying to go the TL route. They're trying to just, actually, by the way, catch lightning in a bottle like a third time in a row, so good luck to them. But by the way, that won't win in the long run. In the long run, you're better off being the team that can sign the star players. So if we come back to EG, I have to say, Crumbz, I want to get your take on this, because I personally know fuck all about the Jojo guy, and this is actually a big concern. I obviously know Vulcan, I think he's a pretty good player in general. My problem with this particular move is this. I also agree with the inspired angle that Rich brings up, because I don't see where all these winning lanes are going to come from on this team. I thought personally Jizuki was great last year, like, in relative to who EG had possible to get, you know. And the problem is this. Peter Dunn's entire strength in his career thus far has been finding talent with the eye test and picking people out who you wouldn't expect to be good. I think this is a bridge too far on this one. Mid lane isn't a joke role. It has to be, in theory, the best player on your team. So if he's really gone out and scouted this guy's going to be like a Jensen, Jizuki, Bjergsen type player. The fair player, he knows more about League than I ever will. All I'll say is this. I actually think NA does have a lot of fool's gold talent. Like, what they do in NA, it's basically, we could have had this discussion if we bothered talking about Tactical, we just won't do it. Tactical's the best example. Old School Contracts is another example. You don't even have to actually be consistently good in NA. If you just have one really good split, people are so horny for there to be good NA talent, they'll just crown you immediately. Like, dude, it took years for Contracts to actually be considered a bust. And by the way, spoiler, he's back. Like a fucking, some sort of mad horror villain from the 80s. He's back again. He's back to terrorise the whole league and pretend he's good now. So same thing I'm going to say with all these split. Fucking go through the list, mate. Tactical's one of them. And you could even arguably say Licorice did this. He just had a longer period. He had 2 years, let's say, that he was really good. Like, give me a break, mate. Like, I don't believe you've just found the next really good player for mid lane out of nowhere in the LCS. Do you disagree, Crumbz? Do you think this guy's going to do it?
So
is he some like prodigy? Does he look really talented?
I don't know if he's like, he looks really talented, right? He does look really talented, except the problem is, let's go back to the angle about Rich and Inspired being really good because his lanes are so strong. The strongest lane you have is Impact here. Like, that's a known factor. He was one of the best top laners in last year in the LCS. Some say he got snubbed for being the #1 top laner. Whatever. He was really solid. But Vulcan really struggled in lane with Sven in a lot of games internationally, even some games locally. That laning phase did not go well. He's been good before, but the laning phase was not the strength for Vulcan. The roaming and team fighting was. Danny struggled in lane as well. He was not a good laner. That is his worst aspect of the game. Team fighting, incredible. Highlight reel, whatever. But now you have a weak bot side, a top side that you can play around, and an X factor in the mid lane. So you don't really have that much to even make mid laner look good. Because if your bot lane is losing, you're not playing 1v1 mid. Like, that's not going to be the game anymore. So you actually need the bot lane to be influencing the mid so that you can look good. And this is where I worry for Jojo. As a newer player, he has to be so much better than the rest to be able to overcome this. And it doesn't seem like in a lot of these matchups against the top teams like TL is going to be, how are you going to now deal with Core JJ roaming to your lane, because you're not going to win that lane in the bot lane. So I think that this is the aspect for Jojo that I'm most worried about. I think he can hold his own 1v1, but the game won't come down to that.
Here's the problem, Crumbz. I basically already did this a year ago, and this is where you know that these names are flashes in the pan in NA. Because there's a player who just signed as the mid laner of CLG, so you're going to think, wow, this must be incredible, right? Parlofox. Right, here's what people don't know. I'll give you a little peek behind the curtain for a second if you're a fan. When Jack was deciding at the beginning of last off-season who was going to be my mid laner, there were three choices. He already had Niski, and he'd won the LCS with him. He was looking at perks, but that's going to break the bank and cost Megabox. Or he's got Parlofox on his academy squad. Now, this is what's mad. His order went like this. Obviously, perks, if I decide to do the deal's the best option. Number 2 was Parlofox. It's like, right, I go with the youth. I try and see if there's the next guy, blah, blah, blah. And then Niski's the third option. I said to him, look, mate, there are only 2 options as far as I'm concerned. You either stick with Niski, that's the bird in the hand, or you go for perks and try and break the back. I said the Parlofox one is like, I don't even know what that gamble is. I said, isn't the Parlofox gamble the gamble that he can even be as good as Niski? Like, have I missed something? Because again, the guy's just coming out of academy. So all I'll say is, how did that one work out? And by the way, I don't, before anyone goes, yeah, but he's on a bad team. Of all the roles in League of Legends that you could play on your own, a guy even made a fucking team org based around this and carry the game. I think mid lane would probably be it. I think that's the role that has the least room to complain about lack of help. Like, you can basically just play fucking save champions and farm up and carry half the games. Spoiler, someone did that in Korea. Anyway, let's just dig at someone who's another analyst there. So here's the thing. To me, I think this is another Parlofox move. It's like, because here's the problem I have, Crumbz. I never heard any hype about this guy. I heard hype the whole year in Academy about the Parlofox guy. Like, he's the future of NA. He's going to be so fucking sick. He's just an
Here's what I heard. Here's what I heard, though. I heard that was not the first choice. Jojo is not the first choice.
Right.
There's obviously looking for who can we buy?
Maybe they were thinking of Jensen or someone.
This is what all the teams do, really. Like, it's not exclusive to EG or this role. They go, who can we buy? Great, we can't get him. Do we have a pipeline to put somebody in here that's gonna not break the bank? All right. Well, this is what we can get. All right, we have this. So I do think this is what they're going for. It's one of the better teams to go for because they have had success with bringing up players to at least be at LCS level. So it could pay off like the Danny payoff, but we don't even know if Danny's confirmed for EG next year as well. So the whole team might have had different intentions, like the first time around where EG joined, where they try to sign Chovy and all these other big names and then just settle for who they could get.
What are your thoughts on this, Rich?
Yeah, so on the player specifically, I don't really know anything about him, to be honest. I mean, I know who he is, but I don't watch Academy games, so I have no clue how good or bad this guy is. I would just say, like, as a philosophy, I think NA are in a very difficult... I mean, the way you phrased your opinion on this, I think, Thorin, kind of sums up a lot of the systemic issues that they have in NA in general, because I don't think that would be an argument that you would use for, like, someone in Europe, like a Europe, especially in mid lane, who have been like smurfing on the ERL level and then had gone to EU Masters and bodied everyone. You'd actually feel at that point that you had enough data where you're like, actually, especially with mid lane, because of, as you say, the individual aspects of that lane, you could feel pretty comfortable about promoting that guy. And in fact, LEC teams have, and no one's been like, oh my God, they took Rika, what idiots. So like, yeah, Rika's really good. And if Shayak didn't have school, I mean, this guy's the next Caps probably, right? Like, this guy's legitimately insane at the game. He just has school, so people are like waiting on that. But like LEC teams are like warring over this guy. Like, legit, everyone wants this guy. You'll never have something like that in NA, at least until they change something systemically, because the format of Academy and how the teams are structured mean that you can never be fully confident. This guy can go 12-0 every Academy game, and he's playing against some absolute randoms. Like, I don't know how to gauge it. I don't know how seriously the players are taking it, because the competition is just like this super contrived, fabricated thing with no light at the end of the tunnel. Woo, I won a CAD. There's not even like an equivalent of EU Masters or anything which has like a big viewing audience. No one's even watching your game. So your best hope is that you position yourself behind like a weak LEC level mid laner, and then you play enough in houses where they're like, okay, we have to give this guy a chance. That's basically like NA Academy in a nutshell, and why I think it needs to drastically change. But obviously that's a conversation for a different time. So yeah, on the player himself, I don't really have much knowledge of him, but it does not surprise me that they might be using him as a placeholder with the hope of buying someone else out, because even if they feel that he's really good or whatever, they can't know for sure.
Yes. Actually, there's one thing we should probably just add for people for future context. Obviously, especially after what 100 Thieves did this year, I think there are going to be more teams looking at that exact move of like, right, look, we can always make the decision at halfway point. If at the middle point before the summer split, we decide we need a player, that's someone we'll spend and buy. So, for example, if someone like a Jensen is still out in the wind at that point in time, if you think that's the one piece that takes you over the top, maybe you sign him then.
Like Poe Belter when he came in for CLG, right? Just look for who doesn't have a team. All right, come on in halfway through.
Yeah. The problem I have is this, Crumbz. Even though you put, like, look, for banter's sake, I definitely think EG's better than TSM. We'll get to TSM in a minute. Like, they haven't done great signings. The problem is, of all these teams we're talking about, this so-called top four you're listing, dude, I think EG has the worst lineup of them all. And that's despite the fact we haven't even got to Cloud9 yet. And I genuinely can't even tell you how, like, 4 of the Cloud9 players are going to fucking play. But despite that, somehow I have more faith in that lineup than I do. And I think this lineup isn't that good for EG. Like I say, I'm going to put this, like I said about Jojo. If it really does work out, it'll just be another chapter and why Peter Dunn is in some way sort of a semi-genius at League of Legends, like with the eye test at least. I'm going to say I think he's missed on this one. I think this is a whiff. I don't think this is good. Does anyone disagree? You have this as like a team that can win the LCS or be a top team or go to Worlds?
Not against TL. Not taking down TL. This is not happening. Maybe not even Thieves, right? Like maybe third somehow you pull. Like Jojo's incredible. Maybe you get like Danny's leveling up. It looks incredible. Not top 2. No way. Go to Worlds, so top 3 does go.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.